I've lit in our chalice recognition of a community, representative of a tradition, of seeking truth within the context of relationships. A community comes first, the common cup. The inspiration, the energy, the need comes from the fire. The fire can represent illumination, wisdom, welcome even, warmth. It's a tool. It's a symbol. It's a reality that we live in, seeking those ideas that touch us deep in who we are and helps define us, as light can come into a room and you can see the faces. So let the imagery and the symbolism of our flaming chalice represent for us our community of faith. A common cup holding something magic and precious, created by our endeavor, by our intention, created because we need it and we want it and we demand it for our lives. Not something handed down, not something borrowed, not something because some authority, some guru, tradition, or power says this is the way it is. But us coming together, looking at our lives, at the world, at human history, at the personalities we are, the needs we have, and saying yes and learning better to be human beings in relationship, creating and sustaining a better world. The Unitarian Universalist Church of Tampa is assembled. As I said, we're here to be about the maintenance of a faith. Not a prescribed thing, but a thing that comes up in our living, that we have to recognize. Y'all have heard me grieve about the old tradition of Unitarian Universalists saying sometimes that we can believe anything we want to believe. That's not it. That's not it at all. Unitarian Universalists believe what they have to believe, what their life encounters show them, what the circumstances of loss and betrayal and disappointment show them, to somehow to craft hope and love out of sometime tragedy and misery. That's faith. That's a hoping. That's hard work. And if there's anybody that are hard workers in this faith development, this spirituality stuff, is Unitarian Universalist. Because we are literalists. We're hard-nosed. We push truth to the wall and make it give us more than it can sometimes. So it's good to be together. It's good to celebrate this day, the wonderful heat that Tampa can produce. And Lord bless the air-conditioned engineers. Father's Day is an occasion motivated by a lot of reasons, inspired by a lot of concerns. It's an opportunity to say yes and thank you to daddies. But as we all know, in reality, it's like Mother's Day. The idea of commemorating that which is perfect leaves some flawed folks and hurt people in a bad place. So fathers are biological sperm donors. That's one thing. Daddies are different things. So I want us to remember today and maybe dedicate our time together, not so much to the perfection of dad, fatherhood, but the reality of most of them were doing the best they could with what they had. For those of us who might have had flawed and toxic dads, we would stand with one another and understand that's a hard thing to live with. The hurts human beings put on others, and especially those close to us, is imaginable and unfathomable. It happens. So rather than the sweetness and light, let's go to the dark and the troublesome a little bit to help understand how sweet it is to find love wherever we find it. And mentoring and good men that say to children the things they need to hear and be to them what they need to be. So daddies and folks who love that generation coming after them are special people. And they bring gifts and they bring blessings. And that's what it's all about. So for my flawed dad, and maybe your flawed dad, we would say thanks. And maybe look around to those who are giving it their best in our midst to be fathers in a troubled time, our support. So let's remember and love that special heritage that we have, honestly and with as much compassion and understanding as we could find. Why do Unitarian Universalists come together? We don't come together to share an old story of God's grace perpetrated through the acts of the Jews and the Christians. We don't come to remember and review old texts about reality and how it was. Although all of that can be very meaningful, we can find identity spots. The Scriptures have not endured because they are nonsense. They've endured because they speak of a faith of a people who were touched by a message and a man. The theology that came out of that is another story. But the stories of Scripture and the stories of the religious heritage that we inherit in the Western world are real and valid. They're there. Our ignoring them and ridiculing is beneath us. That shows a small mind and a petty spirit. Acknowledging that they don't speak to us as we feel they should is being honest. So we come together as Unitarian Universalists to examine life with an open mind, hopefully with a generous heart, to say, what can I learn? What can I learn? Christianity taught us the power of love. The story of Jesus is one of significance no matter where you see it. A good fellow, a revolutionary, a working person, coming from nowhere, bringing to the world a message that it needed at that time in a small, insignificant place. Well, you know, I bet there were people like that in the darkest parts of Gaul, China, Africa. They just didn't have the press agents. They didn't have the Holy Roman Empire that ruled the world, taking and robbing that tradition and making it their state religion. But the idea that Jesus brings is a universal idea of love conquering division. One of the most famous passages I love is the one on the cross when he looks down and he knows what's coming and he's reaching out and he sees his mama and he sees young John and he looks at John and says, "John, behold your mother. Mother, behold your son. I give you love. I leave it for you to work it out." And you can have little men running around with fancy little suits doing mean things because they're authority figures. And you can build great cathedrals. And you can have crusades going against people who look different in the name of that fella. But he said some nice stuff. And I, as a recovered Christian, will own it and say, blessed be. But it means that we also, as Unitarian Universalists, look at the power of humanism, of science, of the great religions, of Confucianism and Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam, to know that those truths have been spread around the world. The unity of life and the universality of truth. Pretty simple stuff. Let us dedicate today to daddies and to possibilities.